Hey, what's up guys? Joker here. Today I wanted to talk to you about braided cables and maybe debunk some of the myths or just bring to light some information about braided cables that you may or may not be aware of. I'm aware that some people just buy braided cables because it happens to be on the mouse of their choice that they're picking up, and a lot of the high-end mice out there nowadays just have braided cables on them, and it's almost become sort of synonymous with quality or a high-end gaming product. Like it is, if your mouse doesn't have a braided cable, then it's not even a quality product. Believe me, there are people out there that will say flat out, no braided cable, no buy. They will not buy a cable unless it's braided, and I have a feeling maybe some of them think that it is actually giving them some type of benefit, but in reality, it really is just an aesthetic thing. And I could be sensitive to the fact that if you like braided cables because they look nice and they feel good and they are attractive and you have a lot more options there, you can do multicolored threading on the braids and all of that stuff. And if you want to color match your system and everything, then that's a really good way to do it with a braided cable. And I'm not trying to stand in your way of that at all. All I want to do in this video is present some information about braided cables that you may not be aware of, because there are actually some drawbacks to using a braided cable. So that's what we're going to take a look at here today. So when you go out and look at many of the higher-end gaming mice out there, when I say higher-end, I mean like $50 and up, you're going to start to see that many of them have similar qualities or similar marketing terms that they're throwing out, things like this, and they're obviously braided cables, the reason that we're here to talk about it today. And these braided cables, I guess the only thing they can even offer you, potentially, is a little bit more protection for the rubber on the cable so that it's not going to get damaged easier. That's really the only benefit that you're getting from having a cloth cable on here. Now, braiding can be actually beneficial in electrical terms when it comes to certain cables, but with PCs, that's really not the case, no pun intended, because when you're running a mouse or a keyboard to your PC, as soon as it makes contact with the PC over the USB, it becomes null and void. It's grounded anyway, so it doesn't matter, and there's way more electrical things that you would need to worry about being grounded inside your PC than there are outside your PC. So putting a sleeving like the kind that would even work, which would actually be a metal sleeving, that wouldn't offer you any additional benefit, because it would have no use by the time that it got to the PC over USB or PS2 or whatever you were connecting over. And what they're using on braided cables anyway is a cloth cable, so that offers no electrical protection. And the type of cables that do have the electrical protections that you'll see is actually like Cat6 Ethernet cables, like the one that I'm holding right here. So we can peel this back a little bit, and I'll try to show you guys just a little bit of the shielding. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got some metal shielding around the inside of this Cat6 cable, which is actually offering an electrical benefit. But for a mouse or a keyboard, you really wouldn't need that, because all you're really doing is sending the signal of when a key or a mouse click has been pressed, and conventional cables are more than sufficient for handling this, and you do not need the type of protection that you would have here. And if you did have this type of protection on a mouse or keyboard, it would just be insanely heavy and even worse than what we have right now with the cloth protection. So what are some of the drawbacks of using a braided cable? For starters, they are heavier, which means it creates more drag when you are moving the mouse across the desk. If you've ever noticed your mouse cable get caught on something when you're using a braided cable, it can be quite annoying, and you have to pick it up and readjust it. If you've noticed in the past few years, they've actually come out with these little stands that you can kind of put on your desk, and then it'll keep your mouse cable raised up a couple of inches, and and the reason it does that is to prevent the drag from using the mouse. So you have that option there. But these types of things I never saw on the market before braided cables came along, because when you didn't have braided cables, there was absolutely no need for this whatsoever. You don't need it on a rubber cable because you're not going to have the excessive amount of drag that you're seeing on a braided cable. And that is why I decided to take a little project upon myself to debraid some of my cables. So my first project was the Razer Mamba 2012. It's an old mouse that I don't use anymore at all, and it had a braided cable, a really thin braided cable, and I kind of rushed this job, and it didn't really come out very well, and I actually wound up breaking the mouse because I wasn't patient. So there was a lesson to be learned here, and my second job did go a lot better. But the cable here from the Razer wound up having some copper showing through, and I just went a little bit too far deep into it because I was rushing the job, and that's the lesson to be learned here, is if you are going to try to do this yourself, take your time, as I'll show you here on the next mouse. So here I have the Logitech G502, widely considered to be one of the best gaming mice on the market. It's extremely customizable. I did a video about it earlier this year where I compared it to my Myonix caster, which is my daily driver. And if it wasn't for just some of the overall kind of gaudy gamer aesthetics, like the blue edges and the lighting and some of the other shapes and things they put on this, this might have been my daily driver, because it uses the PixArt 3366, which is a little bit better than the 3310. But I'm just not a big fan of the shape of the G502. It's a little bit too much for me. A little bit, I don't know. I like a simpler product. But they had a really thick braided cable on here, which people actually regard on the internet as being one of the nicest braided cables. And it was nice. It's nice feeling. It looks nice. But it actually created some of the worst drag of any mouse cable that I have ever used, because it was just so friggin' heavy. But now with it removed, it is so light, and using the G502 is an absolute dream with the thin rubber cable and the flexibility that it offers as it goes around on my desk. It's just absolutely incredible, and I am now committed to debraiding every single cable that I have that is braided. My Myonix caster that I love so dearly, that's up next. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to do it. I'm a little bit nervous on this because I like it so much, and I've only got the one, but the G502 came out so well, as you're seeing here, that you really just have to take your time. The way that I went about it was I just started at the end very, very lightly with my knife, just very, very lightly, just peeling back the braid with a serrated edge like this one right here. I just started peeling it back, and then I debraided it with my fingers like this, like little fingers, like a girl's hair, all the way down the cable, all the way down. It took me about 45 minutes. I'm not joking. It took me about 45 minutes, but eventually you get about maybe a quarter of the way down, and then the cable has enough slack on it that you could push it all the way down. And at that point, you can start to sort of crimp it up and grab a pair of scissors, and if you're very, very careful, you can start to cut some of the material away so that it'll fall away easier. If you do decide to do that and break out scissors, be extremely careful, because that's how I messed up my razor one, because I wasn't taking my time. The G502 though, because it had such a thick cable, was actually a little bit easier for me to cut with scissors as I started to get down towards the end. But like I said, it took me about 35-40 minutes in total, but I feel like I have such a better product at the end of the day as a result of it. Alright guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this and that it was informative for you in some way to learn about braided cables and non-braided cables. And if you decide to go out there and you're going to debraid your cable next on your G502 or whatever your mouse is, then let me know. You'll see, I mean, if you go look around and Google this, I forgot to mention, you look at competitive gamers, like none of them use braided cables. Like they hate braided cables because they're worse. They don't give you enough flexibility. And also I did want to mention, as far as high-end gaming mice are concerned, there are some that do have rubber cables. I'm thinking of like the Zoe FK1, FK2, their series of high-end gaming mice. They don't have sleeving on them, and I believe these Steel series, some of their rivals, I believe it's the Rival 100 or the 300, or maybe both of them. I'm not 100% certain on that one, but I know the Zoes use rubber cables, which is probably part of the reason they're considered to be one of the best mice out there. So I'll put a link down to the Zoe mice in the description below, and if you'd like to see me get one of those into review on the channel, let me know as well, and maybe I could buy one and order one in. Those guys don't really know who I am, so I'd have to buy it. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, and I'll catch you guys next time. Ta-ra.